Japan and the internet has done a lot for society, and I know what you're thinking. Top of that list is mech. Just kidding, it's hentai. Wait. Beautiful Mystic Survivors is not a hentai game. To be clear, Beautiful Mystic Survivors is the censored version of Sexy Mystic Survivors, which is an adult game, but here all the naughty content has been stripped. I'll also preface this review by saying that this game is still in early access and is subject to change, so this review is as of September 2023. Arch Game Studios definitely borrowed Vampire Survivors' homework before strapping on some massive bolt-ons on this thing. But live! Vampire Survivors is the best game ever made, and this is just a tacky clone. Yes. Yes, it is. And there is nothing wrong with that. Having variety and options within any genre is a great thing. Let's just be upfront here, Vampire Survivors outclasses this game in longevity and variety of options, so if you only have $7.50 to spend and it's one or the other, I'd go with the tried and true as of this moment in time. Before we get too deep in comparisons though, we need to talk about what kind of game this is. For those of you that don't know, Beautiful Mystic Survivors and Vampire Survivors for that matter are both roguelike bullet hell horde survival games. It's very simple, and like most adult games, you can mostly play them with one hand. You move your character around from the top-down perspective and your character will automatically fire off attacks off cooldown. As you kill enemies, they will drop gems. Picking up gems gives you experience, and leveling up gives you 3 or so random options for upgrades. As you level up, you can collect more weapons and passive abilities, and can then create some obscene builds. Of course, depending on the character you choose and the options you get, each run will be more or less different as you mow down hundreds and hundreds, sometimes thousands of enemies. Being roguelike, you earn gold with each run, which can be used to purchase permanent upgrades to your account that persist for all future attempts. Overall, the gameplay loop is quite addictive in both Vampire Survivors and Beautiful Mystic Survivors, though I will point out one difference. The damage numbers aren't very high in Beautiful Mystic Survivors, so it doesn't have that added dopamine hit of seeing numbers that you simply can't comprehend and conceptualize. That said, I still found myself playing Beautiful Mystic Survivors for hours on end in a zombie-like trance, so it still succeeds at emulating the formula mostly. Story. Look, there's a comic book strip intro that sets up these maidens to be overwhelmed by goblin hordes, and I think we all watched enough Goblin Slayer to see where that's going. You, of course, being the helpful young man that you are, offer your strategic services to guide these mystic survivors to safety. Does your character have an ulterior motive? Well, you're going to have to play the other game to find out. I'm just here for the personality. Now, I know it's forbidden to critique games like Vampire Survivors or its inspired works, but I will say that my biggest gripe with the genre in general is that because Vampire Survivors was made to look like it was made for the Sega Mega Drive, all of these just look like they got out of bed and slapped on whatever graphics they had lying around. Okay, I know that some of these devs are doing their best with what they have, and their art styles are cohesive within the restraints, but I'm just saying that I'd like these games more if they looked better without compromising on the gameplay, and let's be real, it's not a really high bar. That said though, Beautiful Mystic Survivors is one of the best looking ones out there, and boldly steps into the third dimension with a bright, colorful art style that really makes all the magic damage effects pop. It's a bit disappointing that your character only has a walking animation along with a couple gestures. I think animating the characters better would go a long way to enhancing the power fantasy overall. There are 3 stages: Mystic Woods, Shimmering Passage, and Dark Castle. Each have their own enemy types and quirks with final bosses. There are a few reused bosses and enemies, but it's pretty minimal. So yeah, 10 characters and 3 maps across 5 difficulties at the moment of recording doesn't sound like much, but I think you're going to be surprised by how much time you can sink into one of these if you haven't played one already. I mean, I feel bad even exposing this kind of game to new people because I feel like it's a little like introducing a kid to a slot machine. Of course, you don't start with all the characters and their assets unlocked, and each character has a different starting weapon and special abilities on cooldown. For example, Sophia starts with the Sunstone, which targets random enemies and rains down fire from the skies. Every time Sophia drinks a potion, she gets a stat increase, and her special ability is to create a potion. Or you have Minos, who starts with the Bull Cannon, which, well, it fires two big steel balls that roll into the direction your mouse is pointing. Minos has a Barbarian Leap that does AoE damage with 3 charges for her special, and every kill reduces the cooldown by 0.1 seconds. Now, remember that you can get account-wide power-ups, so you can make it so that your starting weapon is always a legendary weapon with higher damage. Or how about lowering the cooldown on your special ability? Remember that you have 6 weapons and 6 passive items on any run as well. I haven't touched on this, but your weapons can evolve, which totally alters how they function and boosts your damage considerably. To do this, you have to have the corresponding passive item in your inventory, so there is some build synergy to be aware of when making choices. Characters like Asaya can carry an extra weapon, or Ciara can have an extra passive, which offer you more build potential. Then again, some characters can be built around reducing the special ability cooldown to 0 and then just spamming that. So yeah, there's a lot of choice, but we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves because you have to unlock all of this stuff, but I think that's part of the addictive cycle that keeps you coming back for more. I'm now at the point where I no longer think about weapon synergies, I just ask myself, what colors do I want to see on the screen this time? There are points where I can't see my character anymore, or the mouse at all, and I'm just impersonating Jackson Pollock's in vivid color. Readability is definitely an issue, and I hope that they address that in future patches, but it's not the end of the world. The music here is fairly decent, but let's be real, that's not why you clicked on that thumbnail. From the serene melody in the menu to the frantic fantasy orchestral pieces in the levels, it's more or less what you would expect, though I must say I had to actually go back and listen to these to even have an opinion on it, because you're usually focused on the dopamine chime of gems followed by the torrent of explosions playing out like a symphony in your ears. So yeah, the suggestive nature of the presentation is going to attract some. It's going to really attract some, and then also push away others. But that aside, Beautiful Mystic Survivors, well in early access and subject to change, is a solid little game to fill in the blanks in your gaming schedule. Gun to my head, and it's the Bull Cannon's balls. I give Beautiful Mystic Survivors 6.5 out of 10.